In this interview, you'll hear from Dr. Lisa Davis, Coordinator, Expanded Learning and Community Engagement. She shares guidance to consider on a range of topics, including compliance and auditing. Dr. Davis provides support to 230 before and after school programs in San Diego County.
So Lisa, welcome. Thank you for participating in our Grants Professional Learning. If you would mind, could you share your name, your title, and the department that you're with?
Thanks so much for inviting me, Gabby. My name is Lisa Davis, and I am the coordinator of Expanded Learning and Community Engagement, and we are in the Expanded Learning and Community Engagement Department.
And how long have you worked with grants, either at SDCOE or your previous work roles?
I feel like I've worked with grants in my entire educational career. So I would say that's probably, we'll say more than 25 years.
No, I know you have a lot of experience, which is why I wanted to interview you and perhaps have you share some best practices. I know because I've worked alongside you that one of the areas of expertise that you have is around compliance and auditing. And you have a lot of that in your previous careers and then also at SDCOE to support a lot of our school districts and charters. So could you share a little bit about how a district or charter school or an SDCOE manager can prepare themselves if they are ever going to go through an audit for their grant project or grant program?
That's a great question. And I will always, as you probably would, say it's all about the documentation. So just to give a little bit of context, I think when we think about grants, often we just think that it's kind of free money. We write it, we write the grant, we get the money, and then there's really no strings attached. And I've even heard, fellow administrators say, I can spend money. You give me some money and I'll spend it. With a grant in particular, I think it's very important, particularly when you're looking at state or federal grants, even some of our private foundation grants, there's always outcomes that are associated with it. It's not necessarily free money. And so on a spectrum, those outcomes could range from, simple kind of outcomes, maybe top 3 outcomes of the program that you ran, to some significant outcomes that are tied to ed code. So I think the piece that is really crucial if you're starting to write a grant is to dissect the outcomes. What is the results of the grant? What are they looking for? And then what I usually will do is put it into some kind of spreadsheet that would allow me to track the outcomes. And then if there's specific benchmarks that I have to track, whether it's 6 months or a year, and then I would go ahead and put that timeline in there as well. With our grants and expanded learning, they're pretty significant. There's a lot of ed code tied to it. So we have a lot of peripheral materials and supports that help, whether that be recorded modules or like collateral materials that can help support sites to always understand what the requirements of the grant are. But it is a constant for us with the amount of sites that we do support. It is something that's always constant. And so that grant manager really needs to make sure that they understand that is part of their role, that it is that whether it's formal compliance for state or federal, or if it's just compliance to the grant intent, that's going to be important because I feel that can go the wrong way. You can get at the end of your grant cycle and not have performed to fidelity of what that grant was giving you the money for and the outcomes that they hoped for.
And in your experience, what has been a challenging experience with an audit or perhaps a site visit in any job role that you've had related to grants? What's been a challenging audit experience that you've encountered?
I don't know if it would be called challenging in the sense that I'm always kind of perplexed when I go to a site now with the county, and in my previous, one of my previous experiences with the Bureau for Private and Post-Secondary and Vocational Education, that the the requirements are they're written, they're available, you can study them, but I'm always surprised at how many people don't understand the requirements of the grant that they're working in. And I will literally go to files where you might need transcripts or you might need an application, and they're not there. And it's just really those simple little details that would get you into an audit situation. Sometimes having to pay back money, in the cases and in my prior experiences, you could close a school. So I think it's just attention to detail and then being able to build those documents so that the individuals, when they are getting audited, particularly at sites that you might have a grant for, that they know what those requirements are and that those artifacts are readily available. So kind of starting from the backwards, building from the backward, the end in mind, I guess, building from the end in mind and building those structures in place.
One of the experiences that I've had with an audit was I had just joined SDCOE. My supervisor had taken another job, and I was notified, and we had a federal grant at the time, and I was notified, oh, you're going to have the site visit, and it's a compliance/auditing visit. And I had no idea what that meant, but I had this overwhelming feeling that it was going to be scary. And I thought, oh my gosh, is this what happens when the IRS visits you because they don't believe what you claimed on your taxes? So sometimes colleagues will hear that term, compliance monitoring or audit, and they associate it with being a scary process. In your experience, what are some ways that we can demystify or take the scariness out of an audit?
Well, an audit is kind of your best friend. And I wouldn't compare it to the IRS because that would be scary. But if you're looking at just compliance and auditing, it's really helpful for you, number one, to do a pre-audit, have that experience of doing a pre-audit for yourself. And that's really, you will find any outliers that you need to shore up in that process. So that would be one way to demystify it, is make sure that you have your materials, your outcomes, and then do a pre-audit or pre-assessment of where you're at. But when the auditor comes on board, they are doing a job. So it's really thinking about that's their job, whether it's a fiscal or grant programmatic requirement review. And they're going to look at whether it's ed code or the requirements of the grant. That's all they're looking for. They want consistency. So it's the big C. You want to really be consistent in your practices, and that comes with managing your grant effectively and the whole program management overall.
What has been the biggest aha or joyful experience in going through an audit or walking somebody through an audit process?
I think it's wonderful to see individuals who've worked so hard. I mean, there's many of our sites in our districts in expanded learning. They really work hard to make sure that they are fulfilling all the obligations of their grant. And so to walk away from an audit and to see in their eyes when they've really felt supported, number one, from the county office, and then number two, that through their own work, they've shored up, they've filled in, and they've developed those artifacts that are easily presentable. Just the smiles that they have and the feeling of involvement in the grant, it's really unbelievable. And I'm privileged, and I think my colleagues and I are privileged to be in the position that we're in helping support our sites to do that kind of pre-audit and pre-assessment of where they're at. So yeah, that's definitely, there's nothing like seeing somebody and all of their efforts being rewarded in that one audit, non-audit finding, or having a federal program monitor or an auditor say, this was great. I have no problems. Everything was right there. All of the information I needed was accessible. It means a lot.
Dr. Davis, thank you for everything you do to ensure that our grants are implemented with fidelity and for the ongoing support you offer to our expanded learning programs. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabby. Appreciate you.